Last time we talked about the Rutherford alpha particle experiment to determine the size of nucleus. So this is alpha particle. This is nucleus. The potential energy between alpha particle and nucleus is like this. The initial kinetic energy of alpha particle is here. And this point is called turning point. So initially alpha particle is here, and when the alpha particle approaches nucleus, it follows up the potential energy curve. When the alpha particle reaches this point, it bounces back and turning back. So when you draw this diagram, alpha particle approaches nucleus and turning back. This is turning point. But when I increase the initial kinetic energy of alpha particle, total energy increase. So turning point get closer to the nucleus. So alpha particle get closer to the nucleus. But when I increase further alpha particle's kinetic energy, sometimes alpha particle penetrate the alpha particle, go inside and come out. This is the main idea of Rutherford alpha particle experiment. So before experiment, Rutherford make a theoretical predictions. This is the graph. This is experimental setup again. A particle. When you shoot the alpha particle, it's scattered off. And he installed the detector here at an angle 60 degree. Y-axis represents the number of alpha particles that enters the detector installed at 60 degree. And EK means the initial kinetic energy of alpha particle. When by increasing the kinetic energy of alpha particle, he measured the number of alpha particles that enters this detector, which are installed at 60 degree. And before doing experiment, they make up theoretical predictions. He solved famous Newton equation. To solve Newton equation, they need potential energy between alpha particle and nucleus. For potential energy, they use this potential, Coulomb potential. This is the alpha particle nuclear charge. This is the gold nucleus charge. This is important assumption Rutherford used. Using this assumption, they can make a theoretical prediction. According to their prediction, the graph looks like this. This is a theoretical prediction. Important assumption is that this one. And they perform an experiment. When the kinetic energy of alpha particle is small, experimental results agrees very well with theoretical prediction. But at some point, experimental results deviate from the theoretical prediction. So what happens at this point? According to Rutherford's explanation, it looks like this. When the kinetic energy of alpha particle is small, this is kinetic energy of alpha particle is small, the turning point is outside the nucleus. So it bounces back even before it reaches the nucleus. here. When you increase the kinetic energy of alpha particle, it gets closer to the nucleus. So it is also even don't touch the alpha nucleus. But here, in this kinetic energy, for example, this point, this alpha particle penetrate golden nucleus. So this alpha particle go inside the nucleus and come out. And at this point, according to Rutherford explanation, alpha particle just touch the nucleus. Then why, when the alpha particle's kinetic energy is low, experiment agrees very well with theoretical prediction, while when the alpha particle's kinetic energy is high, the two are deviate from each other. In this region, only Coulomb force applies. But inside the nucleus, there is many forces applied. Coulomb force exists, and strong force, weak force also exist, which are combined nuclear force. This force does not exist outside the nucleus, but inside the nucleus, this force exists. This force is much stronger than Coulomb force. But as I said before, when Rutherford make a prediction, they use only Coulomb force. So this deviation can be explained because they don't use strong force, so weak force does not use when they make a predictions. So they argue that when they calculate the turning point at this kinetic energy, they can calculate the size of nucleus. According to their calculation, the turning point is approximately 10 to the minus 15 meter. This is the nucleus size. So this is the Rutherford experimental result. Now let's move on to another topic. Now just AB molecule. Now for this molecule to be ionic, electron must be transferred. For example, electron must be transferred from A to B. So this atom must positive and negative. This is ionic bond. So for the molecule to be ionic, one atom lose electron. The other electron must accept electron. For the molecule to be ionic, roughly speaking, this atom like electrons, but this atom don't like electron. So roughly speaking, for the ionic bond to form, the ability to attract electron needs to be large. Then ionic bond formed. But what happens for this molecule? In this case, the ability to attract electron is the same or similar. In this case, covalent bond formed. So the ability to attract electrons determines the type of the bond character. When the ability to attract electron, the difference to ability to attract electron is large, it forms ionic bond. When the difference in the ability to attract electron is similar or same, it forms covalent bond. So this is important, right? To determine the type of bond character. Then the question is how to quantify the ability to attract electrons. This is the main topic. I will call the ability to alter electron is called chi. This is called electronegativity. This is the main topic for today's class. To jump to the conclusion, electronegativity is closely related to ionization energy and electron affinity. So I'm gonna talk about ionization energy first. How do you define ionization energy? Given the neutral gas atom X, how much energy is needed to remove electron from the neutral atom is the definition of ionization energy. When the neutral atom lose energy, it becomes cation electron. To remove electron, we need energy. Energy is required. So this is the energy level of neutral atom. The energy level of X plus is higher than X neutral atom because energy is needed to remove electron. So Xg plus is higher than Xg. This is ion energy. And we can remove one more electron. So it becomes X2 plus. So this is also called ion energy. To differentiate this one is called first ionization energy. This one is second ionization energy. Usually, second ionization energy is much larger than first ionization energy. And scientists measure the ionization energy for every element in the periodic table, and they found a general trend. According to the general trend, when you go from left to right, ionization energy increase, and you go down the periodic table, ionization energy generally decrease. This is a general trend. Now you may know the reason why. When you go from left to right, as you know, effective nuclear charge increase. So nucleus strongly attracts electron. So the ionization energy generally increase. When you go down the column, the electron far away from the nucleus, so it is easily removed. So ionization energy decrease. Okay. And here, second one, lithium, neon. I'm gonna take a closer look at this row. Lithium, neon. As I said just before, the general trend is that ionization energy increase. So generally, it looks like this. But chemistry is a study with exceptions. So there's two exceptions for this curve. We found two exceptions. This is beryllium, boron, nitrogen, oxide. This boron option is two exceptions. So beryllium ionization energy boron is lower than beryllium. Ionization energy of oxygen is lower than nitrogen. We are going to study in detail in chapter 5. Just remember that there are two exceptions for this trend. And as I said before, this is first ionization energy, the second ionization energy, the third ionization energy. I'll give you an example of lithium. As you know, lithium has 3 electrons. So I will plot the experimental result of ionization energy of lithium. First ionization of energy of lithium is very small. As you know, lithium belongs to first group, so this first ionization energy, and second ionization energy suddenly increase, jump, and third ionization energy is increase a little bit. This is experimental data for lithium ionization energy, and chemists analyze, interpret this experimental data. These electrons are divided into 2 groups, and they interpret this data. Electrons in the atom are organized into shell structure. Electron in this group and in this group belong to different shell. As you know, atomic number of lithium is equal to 3. First shell, second shell. In first shell, this electron corresponds to this shell, outermost shell, and these 2 electrons corresponds to inner shell. The electrons in the outer shell are far away from the nucleus, and this electrons feels nuclear charge is called effective nuclear charge. This effective nuclear charge is different, much less than the actual nuclear charge G equals 3. Why? Because these electrons in the inner shell shields the actual nuclear charge. So this nuclear charge is actually felt by electron 1. So this electron is easily removed. So first ionization energy is very small. In contrast, this electron are near the nucleus. So effective nuclear charge of this electron is very close to actual nuclear charge. So the ionization energy of these 2 electrons is very high. So to interpret this ionization energy spectra, we say that the electrons in the atom are organized in a shell structure. So here, chemists divide electrons into 2 groups: valence electron and co-electron. This electron is called valence electron. This electron is called co-electron. This electron is important to chemists because in chemical reaction are mainly influenced by this electron. Co-electron does not play important role in chemical reactivity and chemical property because this electron is strongly attracted by nucleus. So this electron does not important role in chemical reactivity and chemical property. Only this valence electron plays an important role in chemical reaction on chemical property. So electrons are broadly classified into valence electron and co-electron. So when you draw atom, we only display valence electrons. So even though lithium has 3 electrons, we only display valence electrons. So we only display only 1 electron. This diagram is called Lewis diagram. And similarly, sodium has 11 electrons according to experimental result. First ionization energy is very small. As you know, this is first group, so first ionization energy is very small, and second ionization energy is very large and gradually increase. And 10th ionization energy increases very rapidly. So according to this ionization data, sodium electron are broadly into 3 shell. So anyway, sodium also has a shell structure. Okay, this is the ionization energy. And finally, now I want to ask a question. I want to ask a question. The element with high ionization energy, like electrons. This is the question. Element with high ionization energy, like electron. The answer is yes, right? Because high ionization energy means that it is hard to remove electrons. It means that the element like electrons. So we can say that high ionization energy means the element likes electrons. You must remember this one. And let's move on to electron affinity. Electron affinity is defined as following. This neutral atom, electron is added and energy is released to become an ion. How much energy is released? This is the definition of electron affinity. Now, in this process, usually energy is released. So, this is the energy level of neutral atom. And in this process, energy is released. So, the energy level of X minus is lower than Xg. So, Xg is here. So this is the definition of electron affinity. So, I can ask similar question. If electron affinity is large, then the element like electron? Yes, because when the electron is added, the energy level is lowered. That means that the element tend to like electron. So electron affinity large, the element like electron. So similarly, chemists measure the electron affinity for all the elements in the periodic table and find similar pattern as ionization energy. When you go from left to right, electron affinity increase, same as ionization energy. And you go down the periodic table, electron affinity decrease, same pattern as ionization energy. But there are some tricky points for electron affinity. For ionization energy, for all the elements for ionization energy is measured. We can measure all ionization energy for all the elements, but with some element, electron affinity cannot be measured. What element we cannot measure electron affinity? We cannot measure the electron affinity for noble gas. We cannot attach electron to noble gas. So we have no data for the electron affinity for noble gas. And noble gas is not the only gas that cannot be measured for electron affinity. There are very familiar gas electron affinity not measured. Typical example is beryllium, nitrogen. For this element, electron affinity not measured. So this is a problem. So, and so on the left side of nitrogen, carbon, the electron affinity of carbon is 120. Actually, this value is very large, but for nitrogen, it is very, very small, or it is impossible to measure. This is a very interesting point. I'm going to explain this observation in chapter 5. Okay? Just remember that. Anyway, the important point to remember is that for electron affinity, some element, it is not measured. This is the point. And on the left side of noble gas, FGL, BRI, as I said before, according to general trend, electron affinity go up when you go up the periodic table. So according to general trend, the electron affinity I is here, bromine is here, chlorine is here. So when you follow this trend, fluorine must be here. But according to actual experiment, electron affinity of fluorine is not here. This is also exception. As I said before, chemistry is a study with many exceptions. This is also exceptions. So electron affinity of fluorine is not higher than chlorine. How do you explain this observation? According to chemist says that the size of fluorine is abnormally small. Fluorine is very small. As you know, inside the fluorine there are 8 electrons are crowded. And to measure the electron affinity, you must add electron again. So, and the electrons are crowded with each other. There are many repulsions. So, additional electron must be added to. So, there are much repulsion occur. So, electron affinity decrease. This is a explanation by chemist. Anyway, this is an exception. Anyway, important point is that for electron affinity, for some element, we cannot measure electron affinity. So now we studied ionization energy and electron affinity. Now, why do we study ionization energy and electron affinity? Because we are going to define electron negativity. Electron affinity is defined as the ability to extract electrons. And as I said before, both of them can reflect the ability to attract electrons. So, Mulliken suggests the electronegativity scale as average of ionization energy of electron affinity. This is a reasonable choice because all of them can reflect the ability to attract electrons. This is a suggestion by Mulliken. But as I said before, for electron affinity, some element for electron affinity cannot be measured. This is a problem. So there are no practical use. So another scientist suggests another scale of electronegativity. The scientist is Pauling. Pauling suggests another scale of electronegativity. As for Mulliken, to determine electronegativity, what data we need? We need ionization energy and electronegativity. According to Pauling's method, to determine electronegativity, we need bond dissociation energy. And bond dissociation energy is determined for every bond. So this is easily can measured. So why this energy is needed? We need some basic knowledge. let's say this molecule AB. This molecule are composed element A and element B. As I said before, this molecule is either covalent or ionic, but in reality, this molecule is not purely ionic or covalent. Actually, this molecule has both ionic and covalent. This molecule both covalent ion. This is not covalent, not ionic. This molecule has both covalent and ionic. This is on a spectrum. This is a real picture of the bond. So, according to Pauline's picture, this molecule has both characters. So, according to Pauling, this is the bond dissociation energy of AB. This bond dissociation energy of AB molecule are sum of two terms. Because this bond has both characters, covalent character and ionic character. So, bond dissociation energy are sum of two terms. And the ionic term, according to Pauling, are proportional to this term. Now, chi A, chi B is the electronegativity difference. If electronegativity is difference, then this term increases, right? If the electronegativity difference is almost same, then this term is zero. It means that this bond is covalent. So the ionic term is proportional to the square of the difference in electronegativity difference. Now this term, initially, Pauling suggested that this term is proportional to